Learn. It's amazing how many people feel great before they actually have done their due diligence. They've read 5 books. They took a few classes. And what they do is they know more than everybody else, or more than a large number of people. And so if you say above the average, you can get remarkably above the average with just a few books. It doesn't take much to learn more than other people. A lot of people watch TV. A lot of people just don't care about the field. I take mushroom hunting. I know probably more than anybody else in this room about mushroom hunting. Anybody know about mushroom hunting? Anyone? I've read 3 books on the matter.
Well, I did it when I grew up, so.
Oh, grown up, okay.
It's experience, never read a book about it.
Ah, okay, experience. Okay, so my college. Depth on my college? So I've only read 3 books. I spent a couple years hunting mushrooms. So I could be the mushroom expert in this room. I can become very haughty at it as well, right? Now, what do you know about mushrooms? You collected them, but do you know how it works? Do you know how the trees interact with the mushroom? Possibly not. And that's very easy to become arrogant and to assume greatness very quickly because you know so much more than most everybody else. But that's not greatness, because you compare again against the accomplishments. Can you write a book on that? Could I teach about it? Could I safely identify all the mushrooms out there, serve them to myself, and not kill myself? Well, there's the true test. When you get into mushroom hunting, now life's on the line. You pick the wrong one, you're dead. So you get a little bit humbled by that very quickly. But my point is that oftentimes when people look at learning, they stop very quickly, thinking that they know so much because they know more than everybody else around them. And when I talk about learning towards greatness, I mean you can't find another book on the topic. You can't find any more information without doing your own research on it, without doing your own reflection, without creating more yourself. That's the type of learning I'm talking about when I say learn to get towards greatness. Divergent thinking. How many people have heard this expression, divergent thinking? Handful. This is the heart of creativity. This is the heart of differentiation. When we look at greatness, the things that we looked at are generally exceptions. They're generally people who have taken a field themselves, a depth to a new degree. For the external greatness, so not for the internal, but for the external greatness. And they've done so by thinking differently about a field. By looking at the thoughts that people have, and instead of trying to push that thought over, just radically trying to shift it. And this is a notion of divergent thinking. And oftentimes it means composing thoughts from different fields. A musical genre is industrial. Maybe you may have heard industrial music. 9 Inch Nails is a popular band within the industrial music. And what they thought about was they heard these huge sounds of pistons firing and realized that there was a beat there. And a clanging of metal, and they realized that there was some tones there. And they realized that they screamed really, really loud while listening to that there was this really compelling music to be formed. So they combined this heavy metal and industrial thing to create a new sound, a new beat, a new way of looking at music, and established a genre. And some people are very well known in it. And there's greatness in novelty and newness in that. And that's divergent thinking. So when you're applying yourself in an area, whatever your goal is, how do you attach everything else around it to it? How do you figure out where to move it? How to move yourself by attaching it to these concepts that aren't naturally there? And again, think about it. A hammersmith, these others, very, very early on, our instruments came from this type of thinking. The bow and arrow became the violin. The war hammers became the drums that we know in smaller form today. These things evolved, but then we forgot about it, but then people brought it back. So you see, divergent thinking also has this sort of sinusoidal pattern. Something that's very close becomes very far away and then becomes close again. So look to that. Think about the field differently. I'm so glad Mike McCartney just walked into the room. Now's the slide. I was thinking of him. I didn't see him here. When he came in, what timing. For those of you who don't know, he had, I think, one of the 10th largest collections of Star Wars figures. Was it the country, the world, Texas? Like with most records, you have to sort of draw a line to get it. In this room, number 1. So there's this notion of finding a mentor. Accelerate yourself by learning from others. This is very humbling. And many people, again, the same people who read 3 books and think that they're just really king of the field, they're the same people who don't get mentors. Finding somebody who's going to take you and push you to a new area, who's going to give you the insights, the learning that they had for decades in front of you. We're going to tell you about the false paths. This path right here is fit with peril. Careful when you go down this one. The best of mentor won't tell you not to go down it. They'll just warn you about it. Yoda, did he say, don't go down the path of the dark side? No, he said, beware. Beware of it. Some people go down it and they come back. Oh, we did all right here. So, a great mentor shows you the options, collapses time, allows you to build on the greatness that came before you. And that to me is fundamental to a mentor. Can you build upon someone else? There's that great quote, which is, if I've seen a little farther than others, it's because I've stood on the shoulder of giants. That whole notion of becoming great, there's somebody behind you. Look into somebody like Michael Jordan, as a quick example. If it wasn't for his coach teaching him how to pass, he never would have been as good as he was. His huge wins didn't come until he learned how to share the ball. And that lesson was given to him by another person. Mozart, considered the child prodigy, complete hogwash. He wasn't a child prodigy. From the age of 3 years old, he was brutally shoved through practice and process from his father. Massive investment in time, ridiculous amounts of hours spent. His father grew him up with the lessons he'd learned and accelerated him past himself. Time and time again, you're going to look at these people who are known to have great achievement, and you'll find somebody very special behind them, the person who drew them just a little bit higher. Learning with doubt. How many people here know about the Dunning-Kruger effect? Raise your hands if you've heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect. No one. Wow. This is a very good thing to know. Look it up. Wikipedia. Dunning-Kruger. Basically, the heart of it says that people are inversely proportionally confident to how much they know. If you think you know everything about a field, you're ignorant. If you feel profoundly ignorant of the field, you probably know it pretty well. So at some point, you have to figure out whether or not you're good so that you can then become great. You have to understand how much you know, and you're going to be plagued with doubts. I've worked really hard, but I'm not good yet. I've practiced for 100 hours, and I still can't get this violin to sound good. And in that moment, a lot of people doubt themselves and just give up. Doubt is the single biggest killer of achievement. In that moment, when you doubt yourself and you flail. Very, very common. It's common within a work environment as well. That people are told, hey, you're not doing so well. And they flail. They try to do something really, really big. And then they do it hastily. And they don't communicate to others. And then it just goes badly, and it gets even worse. And then they're told, hey, what you're doing now is just really terrible. And they go, well, I'll even achieve more. They fail at it. It's the death spiral that they call it. And it comes from that one moment of doubt where they could have just said, okay, I'm going to have resolved. I've failed, yes, and we're all going to. We all have failures. I failed, but I'm just going to calmly, with strength, improve myself a bit tomorrow. Not too much, and not ignoring it. And I'm going to eliminate the doubt and fear, and I'm just going to do the best I can in the moment. But doubt is a poison. And people who become great, at some point realize how to manage and remove doubt. Not that they don't doubt themselves, that's constant. They realize how they can pull it out of their system, pull it out of their thinking, and keep it from holding them back. 10,000 hours. This is an amazing thing. This actually is why I don't believe in IQ. I don't believe in people who are born special or have these amazing gifts. I really don't. I believe it's 10,000 hours. A lot of research behind this. And the essence of it says something very simple. It says, as you achieve 10,000 hours, you become one of the best. And those who don't spend as much time aren't. And you can see people who teach don't accomplish as much as the student. People who teach don't accomplish as much as the student because it's just raw time. They're spending time learning how to teach people, how to convey it to others. But they're not themselves able to practice as much. So they don't become as good as the art. But they do become much better at passing it on to others. And so you can see again, just the age right here is just time on file oftentimes. And what happens, you see right here, at 11 years old, you've made some great progress, but at 14, you've made amazing progress, over double. So somebody who starts off when they're 2 years old, who accelerates this just by 2 years, creates the child prodigy. The magic child prodigy isn't magic. They're not born that way. They don't have a magic gift. With extreme rare cases to the contrary. So there's savants, who have savantism. Their brains are wired differently for one particular thing. Meanwhile, they can't even button their shirt. So that's an extreme case. But for the overwhelming majority of cases, all you see when you see savantism or a prodigy is just an acceleration of this curve, more hours earlier. Very simple. Tiger Woods, go study him. Don't study his personal life. Not a great thing. Professional. He'll talk about how his father had him out there golfing all the time, much earlier, much more than everybody else. They put him ahead. Simple hours on file. But one real critical thing is, you can't just do it. You have to do it in focused fashion where you're trying to accelerate yourself. That is the critical aspect. 10,000 hours of focused achievement. Think about what you do every day. You work. You work at least 8 hours a day, every day, in and out. And if you focus on that, you can become great very quickly because you're spending all this time. But if you just do, if you just go through the day and you put in your calendar, you're going through your emails, without a focused energy towards becoming great at some part of your job, those are hours lost. Just hours of work. You're paid for them, but they weren't contributing to you becoming great. Adapt. Sometimes people go along and they realize 100 hours in, 1,000 hours in, 3,000 hours in, I don't like what I'm doing. My sister's a great example of this. She went into biology, studied it, learned all about oceans and various aspects of DNA and how it all worked, and decided that that wasn't the passion that she had, so she went to law school. Spent 2 years at Berkeley, got her law degree, and then went, actually, I do like this. I don't like the lab work, but I like this field. And she said, well, rather than becoming rich, becoming a lawyer, or becoming a scientist exactly, she went into scientific law, and is now protecting the oceans and working on ocean law. And she loves it. And she's taken all of the hours, instead of like reinventing herself completely, saying, going off to law school, she took it and folded it in and created herself as a world expert by folding two things together to create a state that both pieces of prep work didn't seem intuitively like that was going to come together. Law over here, ocean DNA over there, suddenly brings it together and is becoming great in this field. Recognized as one of the world's experts in ocean law. But that's adaptation. So our dreams, her dreams, if you asked her 15 years ago, she was a scientist, she was going to discover something amazing. Ask her 5 years ago, and she was a lawyer who was going to patent amazing chemicals within the reefs of South America. Ask her now, and you have a very durable dream with some wisdom behind it. But it was that adapting that allowed her to do that. This is very common, that we have to change. With the changes of the time, the changes of our field. Look at all the scientists who won't let go of an expiring science. Look at people who won't let go of a dying technology. They become great at it, but no one cares. And they're usually resentful, grouchy people who weren't doing it for that internal Zen-like state. It wasn't the old woman. This was somebody who was trying to prove himself, to try to create something great that other people would recognize. And instead they looked at it and went, you're working on something outdated, outmoded. Adapt.